There's a woman every man meets before he wakes up. She isn't made of flesh, not born of this world, yet somehow she feels more real than anything he's ever touched. Her voice feels familiar, her presence feels inevitable, and when she appears, life rearranges itself around her. Suddenly, everything becomes symbolic, fated, alive. He thinks she's the one, but she's something else entirely. She's the echo of his own soul, clothed in beauty and mystery, come to test how ready he is to see himself. Carl Jung called her the anima, the inner feminine that lives in every man's unconscious. She carries his intuition, his tenderness, his chaos, his dreams, and before he truly awakens, she appears in the outer world, wearing a face he can touch, so that he might finally face what lives within. But here's the truth most never see. She doesn't appear to give him what he wants. She appears to take it all away. Before we go further, if ideas like this speak to you, if you find beauty in psychology, philosophy, and the mystery between them, subscribe to the channel. This space exists for the ones walking through awakening, for those who've felt the soul behind the storm. Now, let's begin. When a man first encounters her, he doesn't fall in love. He remembers. It's as if she carries the missing half of a song he's been humming his entire life. The way she laughs feels like an answer to a question he never knew he asked. Her eyes hold that strange, impossible recognition, like two old souls meeting again after lifetimes apart. He tells himself she's the one. He swears it. But what he doesn't realize is that he's fallen into a reflection, not of her, but of his own depths. Jung said that before a man can truly know love, he must first project it. He must send out into the world the image of the divine feminine buried inside him, so he can fall to his knees before it, worship it, and finally learn that it was never outside him to begin with. That's why these encounters feel cosmic. It's not because she's a goddess. It's because she awakens his divinity. She embodies everything he's been told not to feel: softness, surrender, vulnerability, intuition. Her presence cracks the armor he built to survive. She doesn't ask him to be more. She simply allows him to be. For the first time, he feels seen. Not in the shallow way of being admired or desired, but in the deeper way of being understood. She speaks to something wordless in him, something ancient, and so he clings to her, because she feels like home. But she isn't home. She's the map to it. Most men never learn that difference. They confuse the compass with the destination. They turn a mirror into a person. They believe if they can keep her close, they can keep the feeling she awakens inside them. But the soul doesn't work like that. The feminine isn't meant to be possessed. She's meant to be integrated. That's why these relationships often collapse so violently. The moment he begins to treat her as something to have, she vanishes. Sometimes physically, sometimes emotionally. Either way, she slips through his fingers like smoke. It's not rejection, it's initiation. Because in that loss, everything he thought he was begins to fall apart. The illusion shatters. The world loses its glow. He walks around like he's been split open. Because he has. The feminine that was once projected outward now turns inward, demanding recognition. And here is where most men break. They call her cruel. They call her heartless. They call her gone. But what's really happening is the collapse of his inner world, the death of the false self that depended on her to feel whole. He begins to understand that he didn't love her. He loved the version of himself that existed in her light. And when that light disappears, he's forced to face the darkness it was hiding. When the illusion finally breaks, it doesn't sound like thunder. It slips in quietly. You wake up one morning and the world feels off. The colors have drained from everything. The music that once carried you now feels hollow. You move through your days like a shadow, doing all the same things, but nothing stirs you anymore. This is the collapse. The mind tells you it's heartbreak, but the soul knows better. What you're feeling isn't just loss, it's ego death. The woman you loved was a mirror, and now that mirror is gone, your reflection has vanished with it. You look around for pieces of yourself and can't find them anywhere. You start to wonder if something inside you has died, and you'd be right. But it's not the part you think. It's the image you built of who you thought you were. The confident one, the romantic one, the one who knew his place in the world. That self was built around her light, and now that it's gone, the scaffolding of your identity crumbles. Jung warned that this stage, the confrontation with the shadow, feels like madness, because everything you thought made you you no longer works. The beliefs, the roles, the habits, they all begin to dissolve. You start chasing closure, thinking if you could just understand why it ended, you could rest. But the psyche doesn't deal in closure, it deals in transformation. So instead of answers, it gives you silence. That silence is where most people panic. You'll try to fill it with noise, work, distraction, alcohol, spirituality, anything to numb the ache. But the ache is sacred. It's the soul's alarm clock. It's saying, wake up. What's happening is bigger than a breakup. It's the soul demanding truth. Because in the absence of illusion, you finally see yourself clearly, stripped, raw, unfinished. It's terrifying. There's nowhere left to hide. You see your insecurities, your fears, your need for validation. You see how much of your love was control dressed up as devotion. You see that what you called connection was often a desperate attempt to avoid yourself. This is why Jung called this the dark night of the soul. Not because life is cruel, but because awakening always begins with death. The death of illusion. The death of who you thought you were. You realize that you didn't just lose someone. You lost the version of you that existed when she was near, and that's why it hurts so much. At first, you fight it. You bargain with life. You say, maybe if I meditate more, if I improve, if I reach out. But no amount of doing can bring back what's meant to die. The soul doesn't negotiate with comfort. It dismantles it. So you sink. You stop running. You let the grief burn through you like fire. And in that fire, you begin to notice something strange. A stillness. It's faint at first, the quiet that hums beneath the pain. It's the sound of everything false being stripped away. Jung compared this to alchemy, the nigredo, the blackening, when the material must first decay before turning to gold. This is your nigredo, the point where the ego melts under its own weight. You'll want to escape it. Everyone does. But if you can stay, if you can endure the loneliness without rushing to fix it, something begins to shift. You start to see that your pain isn't chaos. It's choreography. Every heartbreak, every silence, is the psyche reorganizing itself around something truer. And slowly, the obsession fades. You stop needing her to text you back. You stop checking her page. You stop trying to rewrite what already ended. It's not indifference. It's awakening. Because you realize it was never about her. She was the spark that lit the fire, not the fire itself. The ache you feel isn't the absence of love. It's love untethered from its object. It's love returning home. The deeper you go into this emptiness, the more you understand that it's not empty at all. It's full of potential. The soul clears space before it rebuilds. This is where healing begins. Not when you've moved on, but when you stop trying to. You stop looking backward. You stop searching for meaning in what broke. You begin to let life flow through you again, unfiltered, unprotected, unperformed. And slowly, the silence becomes bearable. Then, beautiful. The same stillness that once felt like a tomb starts to feel like a temple. The ache softens into awareness. The longing becomes light. The first signs of transformation never arrive with fanfare. They come quietly, like small moments you almost overlook. You step outside one morning, and the air feels different. You notice the way sunlight rests on your hands. You hear a song you once loved, and for the first time, it doesn't hurt. It just is. This is how alchemy begins. Not in triumph, but in tenderness. Jung said that true healing doesn't come from escaping darkness, but from holding it close until it teaches you its language. The soul doesn't grow, running from pain. It grows by making a home for it. As the ashes of the old self settle, you begin to see faint traces of gold glimmering beneath them. Not hope exactly, but awareness. Not joy, but stillness. You start realizing that what you thought you lost was never hers to give. The beauty you saw in her was a reflection of your own essence. Her radiance was your light mirrored back at you. The tenderness you loved in her is now unfolding from within you. She was never meant to stay. She was the mirror, not the destination. At first, this truth hurts even more, because to accept it is to admit that she was never yours. But slowly, the sting gives way to softness. You start to feel gratitude where grief once lived. Gratitude for the awakening she carried to your doorstep, even if it arrived wrapped in loss. You begin to move differently. The desperation fades. You no longer grasp at the past or search for signs in every coincidence. You start to trust that life knows what it's doing, even when it takes everything away. You stop trying to fix yourself. You stop trying to fill the space she left behind. You begin to understand that the emptiness is not a wound to be healed, but a space being prepared for something higher. This is where your energy begins to shift. The longing that once reached outward now turns inward. The fire that once consumed you begins to warm you. You feel creative again, not because you're trying to distract yourself, but because life is beginning to flow through you again. You write, not to be heard, but to listen. You move, not to chase, but to feel. You sit in silence and it no longer feels like punishment. It feels like prayer. And in that stillness, something beautiful begins to take form. It's the return of the feminine within. The same energy that once lived outside you now lives as intuition, inspiration, and compassion. The anima is no longer an external figure you chase, but an internal presence you honor. This is what Jung called the sacred marriage, the union between consciousness and soul, the balance between the thinking mind and the feeling heart. It's when the masculine learns to hold space for the feminine within, not to control her, but to listen to her. And in that harmony, life starts to look different. You begin to notice beauty again, not because it's trying to impress you, but because you're finally seeing it without filters. The sky feels larger, the air feels alive, people feel real. You start to understand that awakening was never meant to make you perfect. It was meant to make you whole. Perfection separates. Wholeness unites. You stop needing life to be dramatic or ecstatic. You stop mistaking peace for boredom. You start realizing that what you once called emptiness was actually spaciousness. Room for something real to take root. And in this space, love starts to return. Not the desperate kind that grasps, but the quiet kind that breathes. You find yourself open again, not because you need someone, but because you finally know you don't. Love doesn't disappear after awakening. It changes shape. It matures. It becomes devotion without attachment, compassion without expectation. You start to see that the purpose of love was never to complete you. It was to show you that you were never broken. Integration never arrives as a grand moment of realization. It happens slowly, almost secretly. One morning, you wake up and notice that you've stopped reaching for what's gone. You don't feel the need to fix, to prove, to explain. You breathe differently now, deeper, steadier. You begin to see that peace isn't something you chase. It's what's left when you stop chasing. Jung said that individuation, the process of becoming whole, doesn't end in enlightenment. It ends in embodiment. The real test of awakening is not what you know, but how you live. And so, life begins again. But this time it's quieter, more deliberate. You no longer fill silence with noise. You no longer move just to feel movement. You start choosing what aligns with your peace instead of what pleases your ego. The world still pulls at you. Deadlines, desires, distractions. But they no longer carry the same gravity. You see them for what they are. Passing waves on the surface of a vast, still sea. This doesn't mean you become detached or indifferent. If anything, you become more alive. You laugh more freely. You listen more deeply. You love without needing to possess. You give without secretly wanting something back. Because now you know that love is not a transaction. It's an expression of alignment. When you love from the soul, it doesn't drain you. It restores you. For the first time, you can hold joy without fearing it will disappear. You can face pain without believing it will destroy you. You no longer mistake intensity for connection or drama for meaning. You start to feel comfortable in your own company. The solitude that once felt unbearable now feels sacred. You no longer need someone to witness your existence for it to feel real. You exist, and that is enough. Integration isn't the end of emotion. It's the beginning of emotional intelligence. You still feel deeply, perhaps even more deeply than before, but you no longer drown in those feelings. You know that waves rise and fall. You let them move through you without resistance. You stop needing to be understood by everyone. You stop arguing to prove your truth. You start realizing that peace is more valuable than being right. You no longer crave validation because you finally understand where real validation comes from. It comes from alignment with the soul, and in that alignment, something extraordinary happens. You begin to attract from stillness instead of striving. The opportunities, people, and synchronicities that enter your life don't come from force. They come because you've stopped blocking them. When the soul is at peace, life reorganizes itself around that peace. You start to see your past differently too. You stop wishing it had gone another way. You stop labeling things as mistakes. You realize everything, even the heartbreak, even the darkness, was essential. It all served your evolution. And now, the memory of that woman who once felt like everything begins to soften. She's no longer a wound or an idol. She becomes a quiet presence within you. A symbol not of loss, but of awakening. She was never the end of your story. She was the threshold. And now you walk through that threshold not as the one who needs to be saved, but as the one who has finally met himself. Eventually, life calls you back. The emails still arrive. The streets still hum. The same faces pass by in the same routines. But something has changed in you. The noise that once drowned you now sounds almost musical. You walk slower. You notice the details. Light sliding across a wall, a stranger's laugh, the smell of rain on concrete. Everything feels ordinary again, yet nothing is the same. You've returned, but you're not who you were when you left. Jung wrote that the purpose of individuation isn't to escape life, but to return to it with clearer eyes. The awakened soul doesn't rise above the world. It re-enters it. It makes the ordinary sacred again. You still feel sadness. You still feel desire. but they no longer own you. They move through you like seasons, each with its purpose, each with its beauty. You start to see that life never stopped teaching you. Even the smallest moments become metaphors. You begin to sense the feminine not as someone you meet, but as the rhythm of existence itself. The wind that moves the trees, the quiet pulse behind every breath. And then one day, without realizing it, you find yourself smiling for no reason. You're not waiting for anyone. You're not remembering or forgetting. You're simply alive. You see now that she was never here to complete you. She came to remind you. She came so you could meet the part of yourself that had been waiting since the beginning. Her absence was never a curse. It was the space where you found yourself. Now, when you think of her, it doesn't hurt. It glows. You carry her not as a wound, but as wisdom. You understand that every person you meet will carry a reflection of the same divine mystery. Sometimes to love you, sometimes to break you, always to awaken you. You walk through the world knowing that everything is connected, that even the pain was part of the design. You can finally breathe without needing to understand every reason why. This is what awakening truly means. Not escaping the human experience, but embodying it completely, raw, tender, and awake. And as the day fades and the night settles in, you feel the soft hum of peace beneath it all. You look up at the sky, and it feels familiar again. The stars, the silence, the pulse of existence, they were never gone. You just had to return. You exhale and whisper to yourself, "Welcome home."